Hey girls, welcome back to my podcast, That Unreal Podcast, and thank you so much to every single person that listened to my podcast last week. I know it was probably a little bit choppy at some parts, but just to let you know, I actually used to have a stutter, and my stutter was so bad that I couldn't speak. And even in school, I'd get called like stutter mouth Scully. So I'm actually so proud of myself for starting a podcast and being able to actually speak for 25 minutes. And I think I only slipped up on my words twice, so I'm buzzing with that. But this week's episode is all about me. No, I'm actually going to give you loads of value. This week's episode is about me and my journey into fitness, but it's all about binging and how you can overcome your relationship with foods and improve your relationship with foods and actually just start to enjoy meals and eat the foods you love without feeling restricted. So just to give you a little bit of background, okay? I was somebody who absolutely hated the gym, but I absolutely loved foods. And that was literally from like a young age. From as long as I can remember, I used to be buzzing when there was food in the house. Like, to give you a little bit more background, my mum and dad are not together. So my mum used to feed me, my dad used to feed me, my nanny used to feed me, everybody used to feed me. And I was very fond of a brown paper bag when I was younger. My granddad used to say that if my nanny came home with a chipper, we used to go down to the mobile homes down in Wexford. And if my nanny came home with a brown paper bag from the chipper, my eyes would literally light up. Then when I was staying in my other nanny's house in Finglas, my dad's mum, I remember at one stage I'd be going down to the fridge. My dad didn't get up in time in the morning, and I'd be going down to the fridge and I'd be eating like raw sausages and raw pudding. I know you can eat raw pudding, but I don't know how I was eating the raw sausages and I never got sick. But anyways, I've always loved foods. So hence my Instagram is all about teaching girls how to enjoy the foods they love and how to eat the unreal food and get amazing results. So because I always loved food, when I was younger, I was quite overweight. I would have said like I was very overweight as a child. And because I was overweight, I had loads of freckles, which funny enough, I actually colour my little freckle in now because I love my freckles. And I kind of wish I had them again. And I never forget my auntie years ago used to say to me, "Oh, Lauren, you'll say now that, oh, I have freckles or I have this or I have that. And in the future, you'll be buzzing to get them again." And that's so true. Like, it's actually mad. I think we always want what we can't have. But anyways, I had freckles, I was overweight, and I couldn't even speak. I had a stutter to the point where like my mom would have to write me notes like in school because I'd be so afraid to read out things in school. I'd be so afraid to answer questions sometimes. So like I would have like suffered with bullying really bad as a child. And if we just go into the bullying for a second, so I know that like lots of people get bullied as a child, and this is not me saying, "Oh my God, like woe is me," etc. But if you're listening to this now and you're ever nasty to people, try and actually just slow down in the moment and ask yourself, why are you making those comments? Because there's comments that people have said to me as a child that have never, ever, ever left. Like the feeling of feeling stupid in school and feeling as if I wasn't good enough because I couldn't speak properly and I couldn't get my words out. Like those feelings never, ever went away. And like, even in college, I still had a stutter. In college, I'd refuse to get up and do the presentations sometimes because I'd be so afraid of stuttering. And for me, it was like a nervous thing. And like, I couldn't control the feelings. Like, I couldn't control my feelings on that day. And even though I was like aware of my class mates, etc., classmates, I sound American, of the girls in the class and the fellas in the class and stuff, and I knew like they weren't gonna laugh. In my head, I'd be thinking they would. And I remember at one stage, and this is actually mental going back to college, I actually at one stage was thinking to myself, right, when I have a few drinks, I don't stutter and my confidence comes up. So why don't I have a few drinks before I go to college? Now, I never actually did that, girls. But that was like the thought process that used to go through my head. But yeah, I used to get my mom to write me notes for ages. My mom, God bless her, she wrote me notes for everything. I hated PE, everything. I was so bad at everything, but I think it was just a confidence thing. And I don't know where it all stemmed from, because my mom was so good to me as a child, and like my dad was so good. And even though they weren't together, they still did a lot for me, and I was well loved as a child. But I don't know if it's like a trauma that when your dad leaves when you're younger, that deep down maybe there is something missing, or maybe you do feel as if you're not good enough. I don't know. I have gone to therapy before, but I don't know. It kind of made me like, I know when you go to therapy, it's meant to make you kind of think a little bit more about your parents. But when I was going to therapy, it was kind of making me thinking too much, and I was getting a little bit turned off them. No, and yes, I told you, look, I'm going to be as deep as it's as deep and honest on this podcast. But anyways, to put it back into context, so when I was younger, I was bullied, okay? And that obviously didn't go well. And I definitely used food as a comfort mechanism. Like, I loved food anyways. I was always a foodie, but I used food to deal with my emotions all the time. And it was only that, like, as I was starting to grow up and I went to college, I always wanted to go to Ibiza Girls, right? And I did seasons in Ibiza. I know it's like full 360. Anybody who knows me from my Ibiza days probably remembers how wild I was. But I was wild when I was younger, and it was like an escapism. I could go to college throughout the week, right? And I'd be grand, and I could go months in college. I'd get the head down and I'd get the marks to pass, and I'd be working 2 jobs, etc. So I could go to Ibiza and go on a mad one. And I remember back then, I would literally have a shit relationship with food. So I'd starve myself from Monday to Friday. The weekend would come and we'd be going to the right venue or whatever. So I just wouldn't eat because I wanted to have a flat stomach in my dress. And then on the way home, I'd get so drunk that I'd go into, I don't know if it was called Apache. That's next to Cafe Bar. I think it was like, I can't remember the name. It was like this pizza place. Pizza Dog. There you go. I'd go into Pizza Dog and I'd get a big huge deal with garlic and cheese chips and loads of extra garlic sauce and bring it home. And I remember one time I was so drunk in the taxi that the taxi man had to come into my mum and was like that, like the keys in my house were like inside the garlic sauce in the pizza. Like, that's how embarrassing it was. But I used to suffer so bad, girls, with my relationship with foods, that it was only when I got drunk that I'd get a little bit out of control. And this is where, like, back then I didn't even know that this was kind of a form of binging. I would have just not really remembered the next day, and my mum be like, oh my God, Lauren, you put away some amount of food. So I get this big huge large deal, right, and I'd literally demolish it when I come home. And like, this is after me maybe just going out to the right venue after only having a protein bar. But I'd be drunk coming in and I wouldn't be mindful of the food, and I wouldn't be thinking about, oh, this food is going to make me gain weight. And I'd literally demolish a pizza. If anybody who's followed me has always known that I always say my trigger food in the past was pizza, and I'd demolish the pizza. And I'd wake up the next day and I'd be feeling sick because my stomach is like, what did she just do to me? She literally just abused me. She literally drank loads and loads of alcohol and then ate rings around herself. And then because I was after doing that, I'd feel like shit the next day. Not only has the dopamine dropped and I'm feeling depressed because I don't have any drink anymore in my system and the come down there, but it was also feeling hungover the next day. I would end up going and getting, back then we used to get like a 4-in-1, and I'd get a 4-in-1, and greedy me wouldn't just have curry sauce, I'd have to get sweet and sour sauce. But I'd always have in my head that, oh, this is the last time I'm going to have this, so I have to get chocolate and ice cream and everything else, right? And like, back then I would have seen that as just overeating. But then it got to a point where I'd be going to Ibiza, right? And I do that so often that my calories throughout the week to balance that out would have to be extremely low. And I remember I was working in restaurants and I'd be getting in like 15k steps, 20k steps a day. And I'd be bringing in iceberg lettuce with slices of salmon. And like, there was literally no calories in that. We get free food in the restaurant, and I'd be like, no, I can't have that. I remember my manager pulled me aside one day and she was like, are you all right? And I was like, yeah, I'm just trying to get lean for my holidays. And girls, like, that approach is so unhealthy. My energy was absolutely shite. I was living off energy drinks. I was eating absolutely nothing. I probably was eating the guts of 1,000 calories. But just like most girls, when they come to me, they're like, I only eat 1,000 calories, 1,200 calories. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. you're not eating that consistently. You're going off track at the weekends, or you're doing that for a week or two, and then you're not able to stick to that. Like, there's no way that any of us could live off that. It's absolutely ridiculous. But anyways, I did that for years. I am like, I would have said that back then. I didn't even know I had issues with foods. I just thought it was normal because, like, in magazines and everywhere else, it was like a big thing that people would go on these 1,200 calorie diets. So to me, I was like, that's grand. And I was like, sure, everybody gets a takeaway after a night out. Yeah, everybody probably gets a little McDonald's. They didn't get what I was getting. I was getting a family pizza big enough to feed 4 people. But anyways, that's what used to happen, okay? And then I would go to Ibiza, I'd feel fab in my bikini away on holidays. I barely ate in Ibiza. Then I'd come home for the winter and boom, I'd go back to college, back to rainy Ireland, and back to having whatever I was having from Monday to Friday, etc. And then doing the same thing on the weekends. And I'd always go around in circles. Throughout the winter, I probably would let myself go a tiny bit. Never overweight, girls. That's the thing. When people suffer with binging, I was overweight when I was younger, but once I realized that there was tools like binging and making yourself get sick, which, by the way, these aren't tools, these are horrendous ways to lose weight, right? And it never ever helps in the long run, and you feel like shite anyways. But once I figured out all these silly ways, like taking laxatives, starving myself, overindulging, purging, getting into running at one stage through COVID just to burn loads of calories. Like, none of these ways are healthy. And once I figured out there was all these ways, I was ruining my gut and I was ruining my relationship with food. There was times when my stomach was like a balloon and I couldn't understand why. And it was obviously because I just really messed up my digestion. And I think one thing that people don't speak about is, okay, I was doing all this to look good in the mirror, right? But I wasn't feeling good in the inside. I was feeling like shite, and it's not worth it to put on a bikini in Ibiza and feel okay for that week or whatever, and then come home and feel like shite again. It's just not worth it, girls. It's really not. And you don't have to starve yourself. You shouldn't constantly be going through these cycles. And I think a big thing as well is people think, oh, well, binging is grand, or if I make myself get sick, it's grand. No, it's not. It's not grand. Like, if you eat massive amounts of foods at the weekend and you balance it out by over restricting yourself throughout the week, your energy is crap, your sleep is crap, you wake up, you're feeling disgusting. It is not good. Same goes with making yourself get sick. Like, that's so bad for your gut. And when you have a binge, I think a lot of girls kind of just focus on the calories and the number on the scales going up, but I don't think they realize what they're actually doing to their digestive system. And I remember the only time when this actually clocked to me, and it sounds so silly to even say this out loud, but the only time when I ever actually clocked that I was doing serious damage was I went to hospital for a third colonoscopy. Imagine, I think I was only 26 and I was on my third colonoscopy. Went to college for my third colonoscopy, right? And there was a lady next to me in the bed, and she had one of those bags, and that scared the shit out of me. I was thinking, could you imagine, Lauren, could you imagine that you have put yourself in here because of all this disruptive thing that you've done to your gut? What? For a few selfies for Instagram? It's absolutely ridiculous. So anyways, I suffered with my relationship with food for years, girls, and like, it's just so unhealthy. And when I reflect back on it now, I always look back to like, why was that happening? Like, I tried to do what I asked my girls to do. So like why it was happening was because I was extremely insecure. I had no knowledge around foods. I seen food as good or bad, 100% seen food as good or bad, because I thought in my head that if I had the food from my meal plan, so I did have a coach at one stage, and when I reflect back now, it actually wasn't his fault, it was 100% my fault. Like, we're all given a plan. That plan is only for X amount of weeks to get you lean. You don't need to stick to that for the rest of your life if you follow a plan like that. And if you ask a coach to do a job, you should be able to take full responsibility for that, and you should know when enough is enough. I was literally burning myself into the ground. When I came off that plan, I didn't know how to stop. I actually didn't know how to stop. I was being so ridiculous. I remember, like, if I was going out for food, or if I was meeting a friend for a coffee, I'd have to schedule it around my food times to make sure that I was back, because I could only eat whatever I had in the house. Like, it's actually ridiculous. I was so structured with my food that if I had anything, like a sandwich or anything, or potatoes or anything off plan, I would think that I was doing something wrong and something bad. And I got into that mentality for a long time, and it was really, 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 really bad. And it was like any time that I went off plan, I would make myself get sick, because I think, oh, well, if I make myself get sick, it's grand. The calories are not going to count, or they're not going to affect me. But the problem with that was, to make yourself get sick, you purposely would make more food. I remember Googling at one stage how to make myself get sick. And sorry, girls, actually, I should have put like disclaimer on this episode. I will put it at the start in the show notes, just so people know, because I'm getting really deep here. I'm going to be as honest as possible, so I help as many girls as possible. But I remember Googling ways to make yourself get sick after eating, and one was like, if you drink like a soft drink. So I would drink like a 2-liter bottle of Coke so that I'd start belching so I could get sick. Then it got to the point where I was afraid there was going to be marks on my hands because I was making myself get sick. And girls, when this was happening, nobody knew, by the way. I didn't tell one single person when this was happening. I used to put shampoo on my hands and then stick my fingers down. Like, it's actually disgusting. It's so, so bad. And anybody that is suffering with this, you need to go to therapy first, like, and you need to go to a specialist. But my DMs on Instagram are always open, and I'll send you lots of love, and I'll always try to help. But it's horrendous, and we shouldn't have to live our lives like that. I think that this year should be the year that we focus on being super healthy, because the problem is, it's actually really embarrassing. It's like, it really affects your gut. It really affects your mood the next day, because you've so much shame around the binge, and it just doesn't make you feel good. Like, your energy the next day, even in regards to like being able to go for a walk, like being able to go to the bathroom, like simple things. And then like everybody is going to irritate you, then you're just going to feel irritated by everybody around you. It's not good, girls. Honestly, the feelings that I used to get from a binge are absolutely horrendous. And like, that's why I feel like if you ever tell somebody that you suffer with binging, let's say you tell your fella or your husband, oh God, I suffer with binging, or I tell my dad, and they've never binged, they'll be looking at you thinking, like, you're grand. It's literally grand. What do you mean you suffer with binge and you just overeat? But I'm actually going to talk about like the perfect scenario, just to kind of explain so you girls can relate, okay? So like, when you suffer with binging, it's like you want to stop, but you can't. So you could be having the best day ever on food, right? You could have had your breakfast as normal, your lunch as normal, everything could be grand, and then something could happen that triggers it. Or some people get a thrill from it. So you could be driving home from work and you get this adrenaline rush, and it's like, stop at the garage, stop at the garage, stop at the garage. So you stop at the garage and you get something nice, let's say a bar of chocolate that you quote as bad foods. Even those large bars are only 500 calories. It's not bad. It's really not the end of the world if you eat them. But you could start eating that, and because you feel guilty for eating that, it could turn into a binge that then you stop at another shop and another shop, because you don't want the person to clock how much food you're buying. That's what I used to be so concerned about what people thought as well. And you would eat all the food in the car before you got home and hide the wrappers. And then when you come home, you are not hungry. You don't want anything that's in the cupboards, but you're out of control. It's like something has literally came over you and took over your body, and it's making you eat all the random foods. And you're like, 1 minute you're having Be Good bread that you have on your tuna sandwich. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you're having bland foods that you're like, why am I eating this? And it's like, you cannot physically stop until the point where you feel like you're going to explode. That's what I mean with binging. That's what I mean that used to happen to me. Not, girls, you sit down and you're watching the telly and you eat a share bag of Maltesers. In my head, that's overeating. That's not binging. Obviously, there's different rules for everyone, so please just take everything I'm saying with a pinch of salt. But that feeling that you get when you've totally lost control, and then you tell yourself that, sorry, he's biting me, and then you tell yourself that you're not going to do it again, and you're not going to do it again. The more that you tell yourself that and you can't control it, the more that you feel completely lost, and the more you keep getting stuck in that cycle. And I'm going to teach you right now what I did to overcome this, because it is horrible and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And if you are on a plan right now in January, and if that plan is making you feel restricted and you're having any of these urges or signals to binge, please, 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 please change your plan, because it is not worth it, okay? That is why I say in all my videos, there's no such thing as good or bad food. Of course there's things as good or bad food, but it depends on the context. Like, all food serves a purpose. All foods could be technically good or bad depending on the context, okay? So I think, like, if I actually just, like, sorry, I get really, like, passionate when I'm talking about this. I'm trying to give you girls as much information as possible, but as I said, I don't have any show notes here or a notebook or anything. I'm kind of just speaking from the heart, because this is, like, very deep. So, like, I can tell you what I did to come out of binging. So the first thing I would do is I would stop tracking my calories and I'd focus on balance. Now, a lot of girls find this extremely hard because they're going from being in a calorie deficit most of the time. That's what's causing the binging. So they're being in a calorie deficit and they're over restricting themselves, and they have control because they're tracking their food each day. And if you suddenly take that away, it can make you feel like you've completely lost control, and a lot of people find that extremely hard. So if you find that hard, write yourself out a meal plan. Don't write the calories, just write the meal plan. Write, let's say, a couple of options for breakfast, a couple of options for lunch, a couple of options for dinner, not restrictive meals. Make sure these meals are high volume. Make sure you have all 3 macros. You have your carbs, your fats, your protein, and throw in a load of salad or veg or micronutrients, okay? I would focus on 3 main meals and 2 snacks. And I would make sure that I'm winning as many of my meals as possible. I'm not counting my calories, but I'm focusing on structure. Your hormones, your hunger hormones are going to be all over the place if you're coming back from binging, okay? You would have been used to restricting yourself, overindulging, eating sporadically across the day. Sometimes when you binge, you wake up the next morning and you get into your head that you can't have breakfast because you binged the night before, or you feel physically sick, girls. You feel so full that you can't eat your breakfast. Then before you know it, it's lunchtime. You feel guilty then you're not having your lunch. You skip that, and all this skipping meals only makes it worse. So even if you are not hungry, the way that you overcome this is that you schedule in roughly around the same times each day. Not, I have to eat my breakfast at 9 a.m. every day, but give yourself a window. Start regulating your hunger hormones, because your hunger hormones are going to be completely out of sync at the start. So regulate your hunger hormones. Aim for 3 main meals and 2 snacks. Try to be consistent. Make meals that you genuinely enjoy, meals that make you feel good, meals that taste unreal. So for example, like, I would have my chocolate brownie oats. Let's say chocolate is a trigger food. Put it in your breakfast. Add in some berries for fiber, add in a scoop of protein for protein, and then oats take longer to break down, so they should help you stay fuller for longer. That's a balanced breakfast. If you know you're hungry between breakfast and lunch, add in a snack. Why don't you have some yogurt and fruit or something like that? Let's go back to lunch. Lunch could be a chicken wrap. Again, no such thing as good or bad food. Carbs are not bad. You don't even need to have low-fat cheese. Put in your chicken. Don't weigh your chicken. Just pick a protein source, whether it's chicken, prawns, beef, whatever. Remember, we're just focusing on balance. And then dinner could be a chicken curry, okay? If you want to have half and half, and you want to have half a pack of rice and a little naan bread, you go there. It doesn't have to be restrictive, girls. At the start, you're just focusing on making yourself feel full, and then you're also focusing on adding in your chocolate or whatever it is. And then I think the main thing from that as well, girls, is I would start programming in a meal with friends, like at least once a week, to kind of break down the barrier of being on a plan. So for example, what I would do is, if pizza is my trigger food, invite your friends over or go for pizza with your friends. Start giving yourself permission to eat all the foods you love. And if you find that it's usually when you're alone, you binge, eat those trigger foods with friends first, so that you get comfortable eating them and you understand that those foods are not good or bad, okay? That's what I would do. Now, if that doesn't work with the foods and you are binging because it's not down to restricting, obviously that takes time to work as well, girls. Like, you have to give yourself time, and like, like the urges are still going to come. You have to totally retrain your brain. Like this does not happen overnight. But what I'd be doing alongside that is I'd be doing lots of reflection work, lots of journaling. I'd be starting my day focusing on my goals, identifying what I'm grateful for, what I was talking about in the last episode. Go back and listen to that if you haven't. But I'd be identifying what I'm grateful for. I'd be writing out 5 things I'm grateful for each day. And it could be, I am grateful I didn't binge. I am grateful to have an abundance of foods. I am grateful to start another day feeling as if I'm in control. Do you know what I mean? And then you could be grateful for other things like your morning coffee, whatever it is. And then you should start saying, okay, so I'm grateful for these, my affirmations. I don't binge anymore. And then you could say like, I am away on holidays at a buffet and I feel totally in control of my foods. These could be your affirmations. And then you could do things that's going to get you closer to your goal that day. I'm going to make myself eat 3 meals today, or I'm going to go get that popcorn at the cinema with my friends, but I'm not going to feel guilty for having the popcorn. So when I come home, I'm going to have my dinner as normal. I'm not skipping my dinner just because I have popcorn at the cinema. All these small things, girls, will add up, okay? But if you're starting the year off in January and you're like, I just want to lose weight now, and you have issues with binging and you've never worked on your relationship with food, you're doing it wrong. You have to take a couple of steps backwards first to be able to move forwards. You need to fix your relationship with foods. You cannot just keep going through the same thing again. You're stuck in that binge cycle. You're restricting, you're binging, you're restricting, you're binging, you're restricting, you're binging. It doesn't get you anywhere. Take it from me, it really doesn't. And the thing is, like, when you can overcome binging and when you can start seeing food not just as fuel, it can still be there as fun, but when you see food as like serving a purpose as well, you'll notice that you'll be able to live your life so much more free. You won't be waking up feeling groggy. You won't be waking up with digestive issues. You'll be going for regular bowel movements. Like, everything is going to be amazing. You won't have any fear or anxiety about going out for meals with your friends. Like, a life without binging is so fulfilling, girls. It really is. And it just makes you feel amazing. But until you kind of stop doing this, it's really difficult for you to understand how you're going to feel at the other end. And you might think that you're stuck and you might think that you can't overcome binging, but if I could overcome binging, then you can. And I think, again, like, if you believe that I'm just that person that binges, or I'm fat, or I'm this, or I'm that, and you say all these negative things about yourself, you are going to create that life. Just like what I said in my last podcast, like, you can create whatever life you like. And I know I'm not a therapist, girls, right? So I never want to like say that. I literally hold my hands up here that this is just my honest advice of what helped me. But if all that doesn't work, right, and you literally are like, okay, well, I'm not restricting myself, I'm eating loads of food, and you genuinely give this time to, and you're like, nothing is happening, then maybe you need to go to therapy and you need to actually dig a bit deeper, understand what the emotional trauma is, and understand why you're using food as a tool to deal with your emotions. A lot of the time I have girls on the team and they use food when they're stressed, so it's a way for them to manage their stress. So then why don't you find other ways to manage your stress? So first of all, you can actually try get rid of that stress if possible. So draw a line down a sheet of paper, write on the left hand side all the things that make you happy, and on the right hand side all the things that don't make you happy. Start doing more of what's on the left and less of what's on the right. Obviously we can't get rid of all our stresses. Stress is normal too, girls, but do that first. Start trying to alleviate the stress from your life. Start trying to have a slower morning. Start trying to have a slower evening time. Start doing all these small things first. And then if you are still chronically stressed and you're like, okay, well, my life is just a very stressful life, and you really cannot deal with that stress, like you can't take the stress away, start using different tools to cope with the stress. So again, it could be journaling in the morning. It could be switching up your environment when you have an urge. Like, I actually find, like, if you suffer with binging or you get this urge in your head, if you can set a timer on your phone for 20 minutes, most of the time it's just a spur of the moment thing. If you can wait for those 20 minutes to pass, if you still want the thing, have it, but most of the time you won't. And if you can just give it a couple of minutes and then go, you should be absolutely grand. And then the other thing you can do is, like, if you always crave something sweet, sorry, I'm just lashing out loads of little hacks here. If you always crave something sweet in the evening, make yourself a little junk bowl, throw in some yogurt or ice cream, get yourself something that has a bit of protein. So sometimes I'll add like half a scoop of protein to my yogurt, or I'll get protein pudding, add in something crunchy, add in some healthy fats, and add in some fiber like your berries and stuff. Make something that is not just a little mini skinny whip bar, like have something that is a little bit more filling. I also posted a video on Instagram last year saying that, like, if you love having a Magnum in the evening time, grand, have your Magnum. But if a Magnum leads you to want to eat more and more sugar, why don't you pair it with some watermelon or fruit or something? Sorry, just gonna put the puppy down. He started to get agitated. He was getting agitated there. Pair it with something else. Like, make your foods high volume. I always find food pairing is a game changer for clients. Like, if they are craving, let's say, chocolate, I'm like, okay, grand, have the chocolate, but why don't we pair it with something nutritious, like, let's say, some fruit, etc. But I think that you can listen to this podcast and you might take away some key takeaways. But again, I'm just telling you what works for me and what works for my clients. And I find that, like, a lot of the time we're binging because we see food as bad. When we eat like something like a donut, we see that as bad. When the reality is, like, a normal donut is maybe only like 200 something calories. Sometimes they go up to like 500, whatever, depending on the big toppings and all. Girls, that's not bad. Like, let's say if your calories for the day are 1600 and one day you go over, like, really, like, you need to put it into context. It's only turning bad because you see that as bad and you write off the rest of the day. Or you start your week off, you're doing great, you get to Friday and then you overindulge and you're like, oh, I might as well start again on Monday. Oh, I might as well start again now. No, just focus on winning the next meal. If you keep having the mentality of, okay, right, I'm good most of the time, I'm after having this isn't bad, it's literally just a little treat, or it's just a donut, I'm grand, and you win the next meal, you're going to be absolutely grand. And if I leave you with like just a couple of things that I'd recommend you doing, if you just have listened to this, right, and you're like, okay, shit, everything that she's saying I can really relate to, and I'm really struggling with my relationship with food right now, I would first of all sit down and get yourself a journal, right, and try to reflect back on a time when you didn't binge. Like, try to figure out, like, why is the binging happening now? Are you going through a really stressful time in your life? Like, what is happening? Is it because you're over restricting all the time and the calories you have yourself on is just ridiculous? Is it because you're seeing food as good or bad? Is it because you're bored? Like, try and understand what the triggers are, because if you don't know what the triggers are, then you can't fix the problem. And then if it is over restricted, move away from tracking your calories. Focus on adding more volume into your meals. Get some inspiration from recipes on Instagram and start making foods that you genuinely love again. The more that you can enjoy your food, the less likely you are to binge. Okay, but I really, really hope that this helps, girls. And as I said, you can set like alarms on your phone for 20 minutes, like timers on your phone for 20 minutes, wait for the 20 minutes to pass. That's one way to deal with cravings. Other ways is making yourself a little snack box or a little junk bowl for the evening time. And other things is just finding something else to do. A lot of the time people binge in the evening out of boredom. Why don't you get yourself one of those colouring in books, or why don't you read a book, or why don't you do some pamper night and do a skincare routine, etc, etc. All right, girls, but I really, really hope that this has helped you. I hope that this has provided some value. My next podcast is going to be on nutrition. I'll do like a deep dive into nutrition to help you girls. I will have one of these episodes every single Monday, so that when you're getting your steps in, or you're on your way to work, or whatever it is you're doing on a Monday morning, you could be making the kids lunches, making breakfast, anything, I will have a little episode for you just to try and help and try to create value. But if you are suffering with binging right now, know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I overcame binging myself, and I'm so happy I did. Oh my God, I see food as a tool now. Food is there to be enjoyed, but it also helps me perform on my runs. And I would never have got my sub 3 in my marathon if I was afraid to eat, girls, because oh my God, do you need to eat? We need to eat, and we need to be able to build our body up to be able to eat too. So I really, really hope that this helped. If anybody does want to reach out and ask me any questions or anything, my DMs are always open on Instagram. And thank you so much for listening, and I hope you girls have a fab week.